Okay, so this is the recording for the week 5 lecture. This is very much on fall prevention and then occupational balance remediation. So we're going to get into causes of falls, and then we're going to look at how to assess for fall balance kind of issue, key things to look for a balance assessment, especially around occupation or activities. And then we're going to look towards eventually ways of addressing it, remediation, kind of exercises or occupations that can really work well to address balance deficits. But this one is mostly about cause of falls, how to assess falls, key anatomy, key movements, that sort of thing. What we're going to cover, this is kind of part one. There's part two that's going to be in the lab. Lab will be more of the hands-on doing sort of stuff. Why balance remediation is important to OT, connecting falls to occupation, kind of looking at fall prevention from these 3 different dimensions that we'll get into, defining balance, defining the performance skills involved with balance, and then dance. I'm going to just talk about dance today, and then in the lab we will actually get into dancing and breaking down the components of balance around dance. Here's your lecture questions for today. Okay, so the cost of falls. The cost of falls is financially, emotionally, occupationally, is just kind of devastating. For people 65 and older, it's the number one cause of fatal and non-fatal injuries. 29 million, I'm sure it's even more, adults fall yearly. 1 in 3 over 65 will fall each year. With nearly 3 million ending up in the hospital, and 20,000 of those dying. Nothing changes somebody's quality of life faster than a fall. They can be going along, doing great, have the fall, never the same. They start moving less, more susceptible, all those things related to that, in terms of pneumonia, bone breakdown, body breakdown. And in that sense, they can be fatal, as in you never get out of the hospital, you don't survive that trauma, or it just reduces your quality of life to the point where it shortens your life. The financial cost of falls is also just to the hospital system, medical system, is also just devastating. It's like 31 billion yearly. And when you talk about falls with your documentation and preventing falls, Medicare listens because of that number figure. They're really into any ideas, evidence-based ideas you can use to reduce falls. It's a money saver to the system. Why do people fall? The number one reason is just weakness or gait issues. Second reason, it can be even, it kind of varies, but it's also a leading reason, is the environment. And we looked at that very extensively last week with the lecture, and then your home safety assignment, which was quite involved around fall prevention ideas around your apartment or home. Immobility, the less you move, the more susceptible you are for a fall. It's kind of a vicious cycle. Medications are a big cause of falls, side effects. You'll commonly see that clients are on a zillion different meds. Doctors just keep prescribing them and prescribing them. There's a lot of cases, there's just nobody looking at the whole bigger picture. Do you need all these medications? What are they causing in terms of side effects that can relate to falls and other problems? You're more likely to fall if you have an assisted device, if you require assist for transfers. Where do people fall? This is a key thing for OT, to understand where people are falling. What activities are they doing when they fall? As you would probably guess, the bathroom is a key one. The toileting is huge. We'll look at that more in a bit. Showering, all that, a lot of falls around that. Second on this list is the bedroom. What happens in the bedroom? You get dressed, you're getting in and out of the bed, trying to get into those closets and bureaus, lots of falls. Third leading fall, just other, all these different categories. Kitchen is up there too, that's a big one. It's probably third. What are you doing in the kitchen? You're cooking, washing dishes, sweeping, all these different things that relate to falls. Where do people fall? Women fall in the home. Usually they're doing those tasks we just talked about, cooking, cleaning, all that. Men, generally speaking, fall outside of the home in the garden. A lot of older men like to garden. Gardening is a high complex task in terms of balance and all that. Most falls occurs during periods of maximum activity, as you would suspect. In assisted living nursing homes, most people fall trying to get to the bathroom. Why is that? They're in a rush. A lot of nursing homes, if you probably have already seen, are quite short-staffed. They don't have the help that they need. You have to go, you have to go. You get up and go by yourself, even though you maybe shouldn't have, and you fall. The act of toileting itself also is very high risk in terms of clothes management, hygiene, all that. Okay, so we kind of looked at where people fall, why they fall. So as we're assessing somebody's fall risk, how likely they are to fall, what's the risk of them falling? You need to look at these three dimensions, this holistic view of the person as OTs. We're not PTs, we're not just looking at their balance, their physical parts, we're looking at them as a person, and we're looking at their environment. The environment we did a ton of last week, as I said, their homes and those home safety assessments. We also talked about the person a lot with that AJOP article. Really talked in depth about their readiness to change, their preferences. As OTs, we have to really take that into consideration. And this is the third piece, the third leg that we're getting into today. Balance. What is balance? How does it relate to occupation? What can we do about improving balance? Because you can, even with older folks. This is the person. This is kind of review. This is what we did. Client-centered interventions, all these different categories that were in last week's PowerPoint from the AJOT article. Need to know all these categories again for the midterm exam. The environment, done a lot of that already, those home safety checklists, the solutions. I think everybody's pretty good at that at this point. This is where we need to know more about reducing fall risk through remediation. Are there activities and exercises we can do to improve somebody's balance and reduce their fall risk? There is, and we'll kind of see that today. Let's just kind of look at balance, why it's important to OT, what does it really involve? Balance is not just the purview of the physical therapist. It is very much essential to occupational therapy. Why? Because it's part of all these tasks that we do, all these occupations that we do. When we make the bed, for example, all those high-level balance activity components, unloading and loading the dishwasher, shopping. Shopping is huge in terms of balance. All these different activities, showering, sweeping, meals, dusting, toileting, we talked about, gardening, all require high degrees of balance. To do these without falling, you need to have good balance skills. What is balance? It's not any one thing. It's a very much integrated, multidimensional kind of process that your brain kind of coordinates all at once. Kind of trying to define it. Maintaining your center of mass over your base of support. Midpoint of total weight, or your center, kind of like your belly button, over your contact points with the floor, your feet. So it's centering your weight around your belly button. If you think about that, that's kind of your postural stability. That's your balance point as you shift your weight and do tasks. This kiddo, she's reaching for the ball, trying to keep her center balance here. He's doing the same thing, keeping it here as he's giving all these high-level tasks. It looks like he's some kind of athletic training kind of thing. So much a brain, cortex-driven skill. The brain maintains these systems we're going to look at not through isolated parts, but dynamically all at once. It gets very complicated. Trying to simplify it, we'll kind of break it down to the parts in a second. Balance is very much about postural stability, maintaining your posture as you go through all these challenging different movements and tasks. We'll have limits of stability. What's limits of stability? How far can you bend over and reach before you fall? Obviously, when you're older, you can't reach too far before you lose your balance. Younger, you can reach quite far. Postural stability, kind of talking about those limits of stability, keeping your posture as you challenge it. Is the ability to integrate information from proprioceptive, visual, sensory, vestibular system, all these different systems coming into your brain, all at the same time, coordinating it to keep you upright and kind of off the floor. involves anticipation, reaction, and adaptation. Think of this. You're in a field, you're going to walk over a stone fence, stone wall. You anticipate it, you see it coming. You know your body automatically kind of thinks, okay, I need to do this and this to step over the stone wall, and you do it, and everything's going fine, and then you slip. Say it's slippery or icy, you have to adapt quickly, shift your weight, that sort of thing to keep yourself from falling. This dynamic, integrated response. Balance is very much dynamic and integrated, all these different systems at once, and you're doing that as you're doing all these tasks that we talked about. Okay, so let's just break down all these different parts. We talked about, why balance is important, how it relates to occupation, why people fall, where they fall. We've kind of got this concept that it's an integrated, brain-driven system, balance is. Now let's look at the parts. The brain uses all these different components, integrates them simultaneously, all at the same time. But to understand it and to treat it and to assess it, we need to know the different parts. Postural sway. The movement around your center of balance, your center of mass. Any small change can be a predictor of fall risk. What is postural sway? If you stand, usually we're standing and doing these as we go. You're standing. If you just feel subtly as you stand, you can feel yourself swaying. Probably not very much, because all you guys are quite young. Swaying back and forth. Just a natural part of what your body does. And you kind of sway and you kind of come back to the center, sway and come back to the center. A lot of people with balance issues, they're swaying a lot. And it's something to kind of assess. Can you just stand? I just want to see if you're swaying. Can you just kind of hold your posture and stand as still as you can? If somebody's swaying a lot, kind of a first level of assessment, they're a higher risk for falling. Stuff is going on in the brain. It's not integrating those systems as quickly as it needs to. And you have these different strategies. I think we may have talked about these briefly in 300. When you lose your balance, your body does these different levels of strategies to keep yourself upright. The first strategy is ankle strategy. So you need good range of motion in your ankles to do that. What do I mean by that? You're walking along, you hit like a hollow or an uneven ground. Your ankle range of motion kicks in and kind of adjusts to that. It's not too bad. Adjust to that, you can maintain your balance. It's like your first line of defense. Second line, let's say it's you kind of really hit a hollow or something, maybe even slip a little bit. You sway with your hips. You flex your hips right here. Just second line, you kind of catch yourself by coming forward a little bit. I'm sure you've all done this, losing your balance. And then the third line, if these two fail, usually this happens kind of instantaneously, you step. You take a step to catch yourself. So it's ankle, first line, hips, if that fails, and then you take a step. You kind of stagger to catch your breath, to catch your balance. And we usually do these, we might do some of these in the labs, kind of pushing each other around and seeing how these strategies work on each other. Here's kind of breaking it down, some examples. The low level balance challenges, this is kind of more ankle, maybe a little hip. Unexpected obstacles, pets, grandchildren, throw rugs, ice, uneven ground, wooden floors can be slippery, wet floors. High level stuff, these are tasks that involve stepping strategies, especially if you lose your balance, vacuuming, sweeping, raking outdoors, that's a big one. Dusting, reaching all over to dust different parts. Balloon volleyball, you see a lot of therapists doing that in nursing homes. They're working on these different strategies. The hip and stepping strategy if they're doing it standing, maybe more of a hip strategy if they're doing sitting, depending on where the person is at, what level they're at. Other components of balance, we talked about the vestibular system. Up in your ears, the fluid in your ear canals is the vestibular system. Every time you move your head, he's moving his head to his left, he's kicking in the vestibular system. It kind of brings your back upright. Think head movements. Every time you move your head, You're using the vestibular system to maintain your balance. Sensory, this is the simple one. Your vision, how well you see, the white cane, and tactile. How well are you feeling the floor under your feet? This is a big one. You'll see a lot of this. People with diabetes, they have neuropathy, numbness. They aren't feeling the floor. In some cases, they're barely feeling it at all. This is the kind of person who'll be walking around the house on their bare feet because they can better feel the floor with bare feet. Of course, that makes them more susceptible to injuring their feet, but it's the same kind of deal. They're weak tactile input. Proprioceptive kinesthesia, awareness of your body in space, awareness of your body moving through space. Think of coordination, klutzy, if you're kind of uncoordinated. A lot of children, kiddos you'll be working with, especially with ADHD or different diagnoses, a lot of times they have the proprioception deficits too. What does the therapist do? Things like that. They do obstacle courses to work on their kinesthesia and proprioception. This is all part of balance. Where do you see these things occupationally in the real world? Sensory, the vision thing. Talked about using the bathroom in the dark, really relying on your sensory, your feet. You've lost your vision. Washing your hair in the shower with your eyes closed. You've lost your vision, so you have to kind of rely on vestibular proprioception, other inputs. Carrying bags of groceries, basket of laundry, dish of food, when you can't see your feet. If you can't see your feet, so somebody with diabetes, or they have numbness in their feet, they rely on their vision a lot because they can't feel the floor. And if they can't see the floor or see their feet, they may be really impaired. Proprioceptive kinesthesia, that motor planning, motor coordination, maneuvering around objects, a cluttered house, walking in a crowded store, it really challenges this. Vestibular, head movements, reaching into the stove, reaching into the washing machine, reaching into the wood stove, unloading a dishwasher, making the bed, a lot of head movements, along with other things, making the bed. Even just rolling over in bed can get, some people with vestibular issues, they have a hard time doing that, they get really dizzy. Weight shifting, this is huge. Of all these components, OT-wise, this is probably the number one thing, is weight shifting. How well does your client weight shift? And we will look at assessing that and doing that in the lab. This is the functional reach test. You may have done this in one of your rehab classes. Basically what you're doing is you're measuring how far the person can reach before they have to take a stepping strategy. How far can they reach? What's the limits of their weight shift before they lose the balance? So this is really assessing forward weight shift. And interesting enough, this little simple test here is the number one predictor of falls. Again, this weight shifting assessment is a high predictor of falls compared to other assessments. What does that tell you? Forward weight shift is huge for fall prevention. When are they doing forward weight shift? A zillion different things. Reaching for the dishwasher, reaching the refrigerator, reaching over to make the bed to get that, tuck that corner in the shower, reaching in to control the faucets. So it's the forward weight shift, and it's a side-to-side weight shift. If you watch this guy hit a golf ball, these different images, right here is shifting to his left hip, kind of following through. As he starts out, he's kind of going right hip, weight shift this side, right hip side, to his left side. This is also a big part of everyday tasks. These are great examples. This video you can watch the snowboarders up to Sunday River, where I actually grew up. I used to work at the ski mountain, but that's sidetracking. The snowboarding is weight shifting, a great example of demonstrating balance components and shifting your weight as you're going down the mountain. These little bongo boards, we used to use these to train for the ski team. Again, it's weight shifting. Envision him rocking back and forth, shifting his weight. I don't think you have too many old folks on that thing. Let's look at the anatomy. The anatomy is key. Actually, I'm going to stop this and make it into a second one so it doesn't get all